Hello again everyone. I decided that since I've done a video on my 5 favourite game mechanics, I also probably should do a video on my 5 least favourite or most disliked game mechanics. So this video is probably not going to be as long because these are mechanics I don't really enjoy, so I don't tend to play games that have these mechanics, but it's just to give you an idea of the things that I'm not a fan of and that I believe most games have kind of moved away from anyway. So most of these will be familiar to you, most of you will probably agree with the choices, but I just thought it would be an idea just to kind of explore some of the mechanics that are less desirable in our games today. So without further ado, we're going to get started from number 5. Okay, so at number 5 we have what I would call roll to hit or roll to succeed. Now the reason this is at number 5 is because a lot of games I like actually have this mechanic in them, and it's not really enough to spoil the overall game, but it's still a mechanic that I'm not a huge fan of. And really the reason is because it's all down to luck. There's no choices, there's no interesting decisions, there's no strategy, it's all just luck. So if you're rolling dice to either hit something or to succeed at a challenge, and it's a binary roll where either it's a success or a fail, and you might count the number of successes and fails, but ultimately it's either pass or fail, to me that's just not very interesting. I don't care if you can manipulate it, if you can, increase your chances, manipulate dice, re-roll, to me the fact that you are just putting this decision in the game into just random chance, to me is just not very interesting. So games that I like that do this would be things like Twilight Imperium, which the combat system is all resolved from rolling d10s and just hitting things, if you roll high enough. To me that's the weakest part of the game. I love everything else about the game, but the combat in Twilight Imperium is just not very good. You also have the Arkham games. Again, I've got Mansions of Madness, I've played some of the other Arkham games as well, and they're good games, but this kind of rolling to try and succeed at these challenges and these tests, and it's just total chance, and it's just not very interesting, but obviously the rest of the game's really good, and it's a thematic game, and it's not all about winning, but still to me, it's just not really that interesting. You've got lots of war games use it, things like Warhammer and, really any war game, really. And it's just rolling bucket loads of dice and seeing how many hit. And it's just, it's not that interesting. And even modern games, things like Outer Rim, which I think is a really, really good pick up and deliver game. I really enjoyed it. When you're doing a mission, you're just rolling dice and just hoping for the best. So what would an alternative be? Well, let's look at a game like Forbidden Stars. Forbidden Stars uses dice for combat, but it uses them in a different way. The dice have 3 custom symbols. They have guns, they have shields, and they have morale symbols. And what you'll do is, the number of guys you have in the battle, that's how many dice you roll, you get your symbols, and that's like a starting hand, okay? That's going to determine or dictate your strategy for the battle. And the thing is, you can manipulate these dice. You can add dice to the pool by rolling more, you can change the faces of them, you can spend them for special abilities. To me that's interesting because you're rolling the dice and you're using those dice to make decisions. Another example would be Ashes, which is like a Magic the Gathering, dueling style game, where you're casting spells and you're summoning creatures to fight. And it's all resolved using these custom dice with mana symbols. And there are 3 different symbols, and certain spells require certain types of mana. And you can mitigate this. You can always use an ability to get rid of a card and put a die to any face that you want. But it's the fact is you're rolling these dice and then you're using them to try and cast these spells and spending them in certain ways. To me, that is interesting. Roll to succeed or roll to hit is not. And that's why it's at number 5. My number 4 is player elimination. Now, you might think this is an easy one. This is low-hanging fruit. Obviously, a player being eliminated mid-game and having to wait for everyone else to finish is a bad mechanic. And it is a bad mechanic. But the thing about player elimination is there are some games that get away with it, which is why it's at number 4. Because some games are short enough, or they're interesting enough to watch people play, even when you're out the game, where the game can get by with incorporating this mechanic. So you've got things like King of Tokyo, where, you know, it's a fast game. If you get eliminated, you're out the running, but it's still probably interesting watching to see how the game will pan out. You've got games like Skull, which are short. Once you're out, but the game only goes for about 20 minutes tops. It's not a big deal. You know, you're out for a wee while, you start a new game, you're back in. So there are some games where it's bearable, but generally speaking, player elimination is a really bad mechanic because it means that, you know, it's obvious. People are out the game, they've got nothing to do because they've been removed from play. So that's my number 4. Player elimination is just generally a bad mechanic, but some games can get away with it just because of the nature of the game. My number 3 most disliked mechanic is roll and move. Now again, a bit like the player elimination, you might think this is a straightforward one. It's an archaic mechanic, it's a feature of really old games, they're all about luck, so it's an obvious choice. And yeah, it is. You know, games that have roll and move, it can be such a bad mechanic. You know, it's just because you can get so hosed by bad rolls for the whole game. It's not D&D, folks. This is a game where, you know, rolling and moving is probably, that's probably one of the ways you win the game, is moving around. And if you're putting that onto a die roll every time, that's just bad. However, there are some games that have roll and move that I enjoy, and that is because of the way it's implemented. We'll take 2 examples. An example of bearable roll and move would be a game like Formula D. Formula D is a racing game. You're racing a car around the track, you're rolling dice for movement. However, in the game, much like a real race, your car has gears. And as you gear up, the dice that you roll change, so you go from D4s to D6s and D12s and so on. But the minimum value on the dice also increases, which makes sense. So as you go up the gears, you're increasing your range, right? So the range is changing. So you've got a rough idea of where you could land. There is a minimum that you're going to move. And to me, that's okay. So there's a randomness there, but you can kind of predict where you're going to go. An example where this is not the case is Zaya, which is a space kind of faring game. It's like a space sandbox game where you're flying around in a ship and you're doing various things to gain fame. So you can become, you know, a space pirate, you can become an enforcer, you can become a merchant. But the issue here is, it doesn't matter what type of engine you've got. You're rolling a die that starts at 1. It doesn't matter if it's a D6 or a D20, it starts at 1. So you could have the best engine in the game and you could still roll poorly and move 1 space. That to me is absolutely ridiculous. Now, I do realise that in the expansion for Zaya, they fixed this by allowing you to buy a part that increased the minimum movement for rolling, which is okay. It deals with that. But the fact that this was in the game initially is just unbelievable. So yeah, roll and move, generally speaking, is not a mechanic that's favourable. But it can be okay if it's implemented a certain way, a wee bit like our player elimination. Generally though, best avoided. So my second least favourite, or most disliked, depending on how you look at it, mechanic is something that I like to call Take That. Again, it's one that you probably expected. Take That is just randomly flinging cards and things at each other, hurting other players, people piling on each other to make the game, elongate the game. It's not a very fun mechanic. So you've got games like Munchkin, you've got games like Fluxx, you've got games like Exploding Kittens, which for what it is can be quite enjoyable. But Take That is just not, it's not very interesting because it's really just holding back cards and then, letting rip on a player, and a lot of the times it's the player that's winning. And it just keeps going and going and going until people run out of cards or run out of abilities and one player can slip through the net. And that's how these games go. So yeah, again, as I said, it's just another really obvious choice, but my number 2 is Take That because there are very few games that I enjoy that are mainly about Take That. I don't mind a wee bit of Take That, I don't mind a wee bit of meanness in games, I quite like mean games, But when that is the central focus and it's just a pure random fest of drawing cards and playing cards and chucking dice, to me, and then hitting other players, to me that is not a fun time. So that is my number 2, and that is Take That. Okay, so my number 1 most disliked mechanic in games. And the thing is, this one could be quite subjective. I can imagine there are lots of people out here that quite like this mechanic in games, but it's one I just don't enjoy. And that is storytelling. I've never really been into RPGs, I've never really been into story-driven games, or games that are super thematic about storytelling. And as a result, games where this is the focus of the game, one of the main mechanics, they just do not appeal to me. I do not really want to be playing a game to tell a story, or to put me on the spot to try and tell a story and entertain other people. It's not something I enjoy doing. So games like Once Upon a Time, which I played once, and there's a reason for that. Yeah, just not something I enjoy. I don't like trying to string a story together from these cards and trying to make it believable and convincing. Yeah, to me it's just not something I enjoy doing. And you've also got Gloom, which I've played twice, and I did kind of enjoy one of the games, because some of the stories that were told were quite funny, but it wouldn't be a game I really would want to play unless there was no other option. So yeah, my number 1 is storytelling games, and it's nothing really to do with the mechanic itself. It's not a bad mechanic, it's just a personal preference thing. It's just a type of game, or it's just a type of thing that I don't really enjoy in my games. Okay folks, I hope you enjoyed that. So that was my 5 most disliked game mechanics. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Feel free to comment, tell me what are some of your least favourite mechanics, what mechanics are you not a fan of, maybe you agree with me, maybe there are other ones out there that are worse. Feel free to let me know. But anyway, thanks for watching, and until next time, have a great day.